The land down under has never been easier to reach. United Airlines has more flights between the U.S. and Australia than any other U.S. airline, so you can fly nonstop to destinations like Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane. Explore dazzling cities, savor the very best of Aussie cuisine, and get up close and personal with the wildlife. Who doesn't want to hold a koala? Go to united.com/Australia to book your adventure.
Today on CityCast Philly, we're talking about a presidential debate coming to Philly, potential challengers in the race for district attorney, bike safety. Plus, I have another Cheesesteak Quest update for you, sponsored by Western wear company Tecovas. It's Tuesday, August 20th. I'm Trenae Nuri, and here's what Philly's talking about. Joining me this week is Abby Fritz, CityCast Philly producer. Hey, Abby.
Hi, Trenae. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. And Larry Platt, co-founder of the Philadelphia Citizen. Welcome back to the show, Larry.
Hey, nice to be back. Thank you.
So let's start off this week with some national news. It was announced last Friday that Philadelphia will again be another stop for the 2024 presidential campaigns. This time, former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris will have their first debate in the city. So, y'all, what does this say about the importance of Philly for this election?
Well, get used to it. I mean, because both campaigns are setting up shop in Pennsylvania from now through November. Pennsylvania's the most important swing state, so they're going to be here. And so it totally makes sense that the Constitution Center, as it was in 2008 when Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama debated at the Constitution Center, is the center for the first debate. And this ties into one of the key things to look at in this election is turnout in Philadelphia, because it's been trending downward.
And you're referring to like voter turnout, right?
Voter turnout, especially compared to Allegheny County in the western part of the state, which is in recent elections performed 5% above the state norm, and Philly has performed 5% below the state norm. And you really need, Democrats really need a significant plurality coming out of Philadelphia. So they're going to be here a lot. We're going to get sick of the traffic jams.
I was just going to say, do you think people are burnt out from this election already? I kind of am. I'm seeing so many ads already and, the yard signs and now this debate. I don't know.
Yeah, well, think about how burnt out you'd feel if there had been a real primary on the Democratic side. But instead they did this anointment thing after President Biden dropped out. And, I like the fact that there's a truncated amount of time here.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Like every single YouTube video I watch, it's like the same 2 campaign ads, and I'm just losing it already. I could say them in my sleep. If this past month or so is not the climax of their campaigns in terms of the level of wild and unexpected changes that have happened, I mean, I'll be very surprised. So hopefully it will even out and will feel more digestible in the months to come that we have left.
So this debate is going to be held at the National Constitution Center on September 10th at 9 p.m. You can watch it on ABC, ABC News Live, Disney Plus, and Hulu. It has yet to be announced whether or not attendance will be allowed, but if we could get tickets, Larry, are you going? Abby, are you going?
I did go to the one in 2008, and it's kind of silly. You just sit there, and it's the same as watching it at home, where you're going to be more comfortable. And the other thing is, big games, like when the Eagles were in the Super Bowl, I have to watch alone because I have to be focused. So the debate is like a big sporting event, unfortunately, in this country. So I'm going to be hunkered down in the Barca Lounger.
Ooh, I think I'm kind of with Larry. I'm gonna stay home. I'm gonna miss the traffic, and I'm gonna take notes so we can talk about it eventually on the podcast, probably. So I'll be at home with popcorn.
All right, more Philly news after the break.
Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
All right, shifting gears. We've been talking a lot on the podcast about the November presidential election, but there's another election that's already heating up, the race for Philadelphia District Attorney. So the Democratic primary isn't for another 8 months, and District Attorney Larry Krasner hasn't confirmed yet whether or not he's planning to run for a 3rd term. But according to the Inquirer, 6 people have expressed interest in running against him. Whew, this is reminding me of the Democratic primary of the mayor's race that was a lot of candidates. Are y'all surprised that so many people are starting to get interested in this office?
You know, I think with how much drama there's been around DA Larry Krasner this past year or so, I'm not surprised that people have been, kind of eyeballing the position and thinking maybe he'll just step down. Yeah, so I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all.
Yeah. I feel like, honestly, ever since he was elected, he's been very polarizing. People love him, people don't. It's been a lot. So I'm actually not surprised that there is such an interest in this office. What about for you, Larry?
Yeah, I'm not surprised. First of all, I think he's vulnerable. You've seen the progressive prosecutor movement lose a lot of steam nationally. There was the recall of the San Francisco DA in Pittsburgh, the longtime Democratic DA challenged by and beaten in the primary by a progressive challenger funded by George Soros. He then switched parties, ran as a Republican this is Stephen Zapala, ran as a Republican in the general election and coasted to victory against the progressive option. And there are plenty of others. So the tide has sort of turned on this, and Larry is sort of the poster child of the movement. So it doesn't surprise me. What did surprise me is all along everyone has expected Derek Green, the former city councilman and one-time assistant district attorney, to get in the race perhaps with Mayor Parker's tacit support. He was a big supporter of Mayor Parker. That wouldn't be surprising. What is surprising is Judge Pat Dugan's expressed interest, although he hasn't commented because he's sitting judge, but there's speculation and he's a formidable guy, a war hero in Iraq and a very stellar reputation. So we might be just at the beginning of this horse race.
There have been a few names floating around. Let's break this down a little bit.
I think Jared Solomon's a really credible candidate as well. He just lost in the primary for Attorney General. So I'm not sure he would want to come out, and he's a sitting state rep.
Right.
I'm not sure he would want two losses in a row. So I think he would have to have polling that really gives him a big advantage because he doesn't want this to be too risky. And he's not going to have the name recognition, I don't think. But he just ran a statewide race, so that's up to the polling. But I don't think in Philadelphia he's going to have the name recognition of a Derek Green.
Interesting. But
Green, Dugan, Solomon, they're all really good. And we shouldn't forget Keir Bradford Gray, who also ran for Attorney General and also is a very credible candidate. So I'm actually impressed that there are this number of serious names in the mix. And my hope is that there's a real debate about policy around law enforcement.
Yeah, so sources told the Inquirer back in April that Krasner does intend to run for a 3rd term. Do you think we should read into the fact that he hasn't confirmed this yet? Maybe he's changed his mind? I don't know. What do you guys think?
I feel like going to kind of the point that you were making just now, Larry, we can't also forget that like there was also the beef about that special prosecutor for SEPTA and, who is allowed to prosecute those crimes and, taking that, so to speak, power away from the DA's office. I don't know if it's fair that, Krasner has kind of been taken on so much like pushback, it seems like. I don't know.
There's a legitimate philosophical differences here, right? I mean, when you look at the numbers, under Larry Krasner, Philadelphia has prosecuted less felonies than at any time in their history, at a time when arrests for felonies are at an all-time high. So that's a reasonable critique. And what happened under his predecessor, Seth Williams, who ironically went to jail for personal reasons, but under Seth Williams, there was real reform. Seth Williams cooperated with the focused deterrence reform, police reform in South Philadelphia. Larry Krasner came in and basically said, I'm not going to be part of that, and it went away. That was a 35% decrease in homicides in one South Philadelphia district. Seth Williams created all these diversion programs, which Krasner has eradicated some of them, like Dawn's Court, which was a way for prostitutes and their patrons to have the threat of prosecution, but to go into programs and get help, and eradicated that. And there's all sorts of examples of this, of things that are classic reforms that he hasn't done in favor of just not bringing prosecutions. So if we have that debate, I think it's for the good.
So do you guys think Krasner would actually have a chance if he did run again, or do you think he's going to get beat out based on kind of all these things we've been talking about?
I don't know. My perception has changed a little bit. I think, it's that question that Larry just asked, like, how will Philadelphians think about this? Is it that law enforcement versus, the reform question? And I think the names that we mentioned earlier, it's going to be interesting to see, are they going to talk about those reforms in some of their campaigning? And then, I feel like we can't forget too about Kensington and how that's being handled and the work out there. I think that's something that a lot of Philadelphians are going to be thinking about as well.
Yeah, I would say that Krasner certainly has any incumbent is the odds-on favorite for reelection. But I would say that given the results of the mayor's race, where the candidate who was the most focused on restoring order, and she got a lot of votes on that platform. So a lot will be determined by what she does, who she aligns herself with. Maybe not publicly, but behind the scenes. And that's why I always thought that Derek Green was the guy, because he's so closely aligned with her. And I assumed that's why he didn't take a position in the administration, which I'm sure he could have had his pick of. But I've asked him about that, and he said, no, I wanted to make money. But either way, he's acknowledged that he's thinking about it. And I think he'd be a very credible candidate.
All right, as we round up this conversation, more houses of worship are giving up permits that allowed congregants to park in bike lanes. So the latest is Society Hill Synagogue, and the area in question is the 400 block of Spruce Street. And this all comes after 18 weekends of protests by the Philly Bike Action Group. This is some reporting from the Inquirer. So that makes 5 congregations that have relinquished their permits. Philly Bike Action sees this as one step closer to having bike lanes along Spruce and Pine protected. Last Thursday, bike safety advocates rallied for better safety measures. And I also read in 6ABC that this all comes, again, from the death of a local doctor last month. Some of the reporting that I read, advocates say they want more money poured into the Vision Zero plan that is aimed to reducing traffic fatalities.
Under the Kenney administration, $15 million over, I think it was 5 years, went into Vision Zero. The Parker administration did ostensibly cut that to 9, but they say that they've diverted those money to other traffic safety measures like cameras and speed bumps. Mm-hmm. So that'll play itself out. I do think that, first of all, kudos to these organizations that are willingly giving up their permit parking. This is commonality at its best in cities, right? Where institutions say, you know what, for the greater good, we'll sacrifice. So they deserve credit. That is not a policy move, though. What Vision Zero is I love the rationale behind Vision Zero, because and it basically says we will not tolerate a single pedestrian fatality on our streets. By the way, it wasn't just that doctor who tragically died in Center City.
Mm-hmm.
Within like a 24-hour period, there were 3 deaths. I mean, I think there's 123 pedestrians last year died on our streets. And so this is a fixable problem. You look at Hoboken, New Jersey. They have just had 7 straight years of 0 pedestrian deaths.
That's my question. What are they doing that's getting those numbers down?
Part of it is not barricading, but physical structures of bike lanes, mm-hmm. so that there's an element of protection there. Another is what they call daylighting, which is removing parking spaces from being nearby intersections, so you increase visibility. Another is speed bumps, so you control speed. All of these things add up, but what they do in Hoboken is not just talk about throwing money at the problem. They actually work on the ground with community groups and community members. It's like policing. I mentioned focused deterrence earlier. It's not just focused deterrence works because it's working with community leaders and groups corner to corner, mm-hmm. hotspot to hotspot. And so it's the skill of implementation, of policy implementation. And that's what we haven't always been great at here. So Vision Zero has not worked here, but it has worked in Hoboken, and I think San Francisco had a good experience with it. And they're all the same answers. The difference is the implementation and getting community buy-in. And then there's another complicating factor to this, which is that the more Vision Zero you have, the more economically disadvantageous it is to the poorer people in your community, because of increased traffic, more congestion, more people being late to work, more people, there's these policy trade-offs that we haven't really had a discussion about. And in Hoboken, the mayor has led. It started 7 years ago or 8 years ago when a 89-year-old woman was hit by a car and killed. The mayor went to the funeral and said, "This is unacceptable in my city." And there is no substitute for that kind of mayoral leadership message.
I hate to see that, that it's the deaths of citizens that get the action behind some of these initiatives.
Totally.
Yeah, it's really, really tragic that it takes that much to make changes. Do you guys bike in the city?
I haven't biked since I was like 9.
Nice. Yeah.
I mean, I don't bike because I'm too scared. I mean, the last time I biked was during the SEPTA strike of like 2016, something around there. Mm-hmm. And that was because of necessity, because I couldn't take the bus. So I had to take I had to use the Indigo bikes. I did have a helmet sometimes, but yeah, it's nerve-wracking. So
I used to be like primarily dependent upon bikes when I lived in Syracuse, but moving to Philly, I really only bike for pleasure now and just to get around, because it is that scary. It really is. Even, I'm in South Philly. But even on the quieter, sleepier streets, I'm still, just because of how everybody's parked, it's really hard to see around corners. You know, you're always worried about someone like dooring you or something. So it's stressful. It's stressful to bike out here.
Yeah, I was in New York last week, and they do a great job of separating the bike lanes from the street.
And you're referring to like Manhattan?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have noticed that like their bike lanes are kind of deep away from the actual lanes for car traffic. So yeah.
Right. And there's always a structure, you know, those spikes that separate the two, or bike racks line the differential between the traffic and the bike lane, and you know, the indigo or whatever they call them there. There's so many things we could be doing here.
Totally.
Those sound like great ideas Philly could steal. And speaking of that, Larry, the Philadelphia Citizen is scheduled to host the Steal This Idea conference in November. I'm looking forward to that. We'll be back with a cheesesteak quest update after the break. And finally, before I let you go, I've got to give you an update on the Great Summer Cheesesteak Quest, which is sponsored by Tecovas. So for several weeks, I have been eating a bunch of cheesesteaks. Yeah, I've been rating cheesesteak spots in Philly in several different categories. How good is the bread, the meat, the cheese? I'm ordering the same thing every time. So that's a cheesesteak with American cheese and fried onions. That's it. I'm also observing the vibe of the shop, how easy or hard it is to order, and any X factor. So like if you definitely need to have cash in your hand, or if you should know that there is a separate window if you want fries or a drink. And then later in September, I'll let you know my findings. So I just want to thank you all so much for some of the recommendations you have told me about in some of our social media postings, like Ishka Bibbles, which has 2 locations on South Street, Taste Cheesesteak Bar on JFK Boulevard, and Oh Brother, which has several locations on Roosevelt Boulevard in Old City, on Temple University's campus, and on Market Street. So this week, I want to talk about cheese. I think it's obvious that cheese is super important on a cheesesteak, but talking to people and hearing people's orders, there is a serious debate still about what kinds of cheese people love. Now, you might hear people say Whit Whiz. That's referring to the gooey yellow processed cheese whiz that gets poured on top of a cheesesteak. Growing up for me, I've always ordered provolone cheese, but I have to say on this journey, eating American cheese isn't so bad, but I will definitely choose the option of getting the Cooper Sharp American cheese. Now, couple episodes ago, we spoke with some cheesesteak experts, and they also said the same thing. You gotta get that Cooper Sharp. So if that is an option, I highly, highly, highly recommend it. It just melts better than regular American cheese, and it definitely makes the sandwich taste so good.
Ooh, I'm gonna have to try that next time I get a cheesesteak, Trinae.
All right, that was Larry Platt, co-founder of the Philadelphia Citizen, and Abby Fritz, CityCast Philly producer. Thanks for joining me on CityCast Philly.
Oh, thank you. It's always fun.
Thanks so much, Trinae.
That's all for today here on CityCast Philly. If you enjoy this news roundup, tell a friend. Rate the show, leave us a review, and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to sign up for our morning newsletter, Hey Philly, to learn more about what else Philly's talking about. We'll be back Thursday morning with more news from around the city. Bye.